So hi everyone, we're so excited to be here. My name is Beatriz Pardo. I am an art director at RepublicaHavas, and this is my partner Armando Estupinan, and he's a senior brand strategist. And he's much better at the agency spiel, so he's gonna walk you through who we are, what we do, and what our personality is.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna jump in. Want to just level set, based on my conversations with Albina and Bea, what, we understood the goal to be of this presentation and what we want to get out of it. It's really for master students, and, talking further, it's not just master students, it's just, any students that partake in it, that sit in on this call in general, to see the potential and the opportunities that Miami has to offer, both as a market, the brands that might be down here, the agencies that are down here like ours, and just showing you don't really, because too many times in our industry, people think it's, oh, you got to go to Chicago, oh, you got to go to LA, you got to go to New York. While those are lucrative markets, there are a lot of, booming markets, even right in our backyard. So there's a lot of opportunity right here where you're currently studying. So quickly, just to give you a sense of, who we are as an agency, some of the amazing people that are part of the fam. I have this quick little minute hype video that we have prepped that's for the agency. Let me know if for some reason the audio doesn't come through. Is audio playing or not? I want to make sure. Nope. Let me see.
I know. It's just a vibe video, so we can, I guess, just watch the pretty visuals too.
It's quick. It's quick. It's about a minute.
So with this goes a little bit of Skrillex music in the background and stuff like that. No, we do not copyright that. But yeah, that's us. That's JP. That's Gus. That's us working. Pretty cool. We do stuff with sports, Airwick, everything.
It's a lot of the projects we worked on, from Sedanos to some other activations we've done down here during Art Basel, Baptist.
Yeah, Baptist Health. You may have heard of them. That's our office. That's our boss. That's our coworker. That's another coworker. Our client. Yeah, I think you get the gist of it. It's a lot more exciting when it has music, but yeah, anyway.
Sorry about that.
So, yeah, no worries.
Go to the next slide. So just to give you a little bit of background, our agency was founded by Jorge Plasencia and Luis Casamayon. So George had more of a background in the PR music industry, even working with the Estefans once upon a time. Luis owned a design shop, and they both joined forces to really tap into addressing America's multicultural shift. They saw an opportunity. So they started this back in 2006. Then we got acquired in 2018. We joined forces with the Havas group. So we were one of the top independent Hispanic agencies. And then we joined the Havas network. So we just got, more firepower, more wind under our wings. So we really, care about these relations with the community, media, celebrities, everything. It's all about meaningfulness. That's the Havas brand. It's all about meaningful connections with the brands, with cultures, with traditions, with consumers all across the board. Then also just to kind of give you an idea of what is that power that we have with the Havas group. It's over 700 plus agencies in 100 plus countries across the world. So it allows for a lot of opportunities. Even within the network, there's a lot of programs that almost think like foreign exchange students and things like that, where you could get work at another agency for a couple months. There's a lot of mobility within the network, even if you start with in our specific agency. Then also, one of the main reasons we're here is because Bea and I are part of a committee at our agency called The Greater Good. So we named it in honor of an extraordinary individual at the agency that passed away a couple years back, Wendy Graham. That was all that, really had a big heart and cared about people. And this is all about, especially this boomed in 2020, 2021 during the pandemic, all about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So just, being mindful. So we're making sure that not only the brands we touch, but us as an agency, we're taking into account who we are, if there's any blind spots we might have, or strengthening, making sure we're all taking into account all perspectives as we think of the work and think of all the actions the agency is taking on. So just to give you a sense of what does that mean, we have within the agency familia, we have 25 plus nationalities. We have 3/4 of the agency is female, and then just all the other programs we're a part of. Then to give you a sense of what is the greater good, what are some of the activities you do. We do a lot of community engagement, like this, mentorship, typing into local schools. We've worked with FIU, we've worked with Florida Memorial, that's a local HBCU, really, overall mental wellness. It's a lot of all these opportunities, thinking through all the lenses of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how we can make it a better workplace. And then just to give you a sense, as you may have all learned in your journey, not all agencies, run the gamut of services or specialties. So we are full service. We do everything in-house, from creative, brand strategy, production, to research, to PR, to brand CSR, to events, to media planning, to digital and social media, to all community engagements, to even consulting services. So we really, it's an amazing advantage because we're able to really collab on everything and give clients a very full service product. And then just to give you a sense of, who are some of the brands we've worked for, everything from big local brands down here in South Florida to well-known national brands, everything from your Baptist of the world, to your White Claws, to your Versailles, to your USOs, to your Goyas, you name it, we've probably worked with them. And then, working with amazing clients, having an amazing team has led to a lot of amazing awards for the agency. So we're well decorated. And with that, I'll take a pause and open it up for Q&A, because like I was mentioning earlier to your professors, I want this, and I think Bea shares in this sentiment, really for you all to get the most out of it. So if there's any questions you want us to talk to, or Abina, Gisela, let us know if you want us to talk about a particular subject, and otherwise I'll take a pause there.
Yeah, I personally, Armando and Bea, I know that some of the students here are master students, so they're very much aware, about the different roles within an agency. There's other students that may not, but I ask you if you could explain when you get into the role of things, whenever you see appropriate, what does a brand strategist like you do? And for Beatriz, an art director, what is that day-to-day look like?
Cool. So Bea, you want to jump in first, and then I'll jump in after you?
Yeah, for sure. Hi everyone, my name is Beatriz. So the life of an art director, there's never a dull moment for sure. One of the cool things about working at an agency is that, as Armando mentioned, you get to work with so many different brands, like on a local level, on a national level, sometimes an international level. So depending, every client has a different scope and needs. So some are more like digital and social oriented. Some need a little bit more of traditional advertising. Some with the bigger scope have film, radio. So whatever it may be and whatever they hire us for, we kind of like get assigned to a certain project. So it's always very exciting. So there's a big misconception about what art direction is. And it's just, I want to define it as a mix of conceptualization skills and craft. So an art director, aside from being really good at Photoshop and other Adobe Suite programs and Figma and whatever, they're also very capable of conceptualizing and making an idea well-rounded, selling it through, being, on top of trends of pop culture, art, whatever it may be. So let's say if I work in the travel industry, I need to be on top of that. I need to be knowledgeable about the topic in order for me to be able to ideate around that client, right? So there's a lot of concepting that goes behind and thinking that goes behind the designs and the pretty things that we make. So yes, I can make pretty things, but we put a lot of thought into it. And part of that comes from our strategy team. So Armando here and I work together in a few clients, especially in the food industry. So it's very exciting because he'll do the research, the data, the analytics on the competition. So the competitional landscape, for example, and then, he'll hand that information to me and my partner, a copywriter, Jess, in this case. So usually an art director and a copywriter work together. So my partner and I will take that information and that single-minded thought and translate it into a creative idea. So we kind of like synthesize it, brainstorm, and then we go into creating that idea that's going to be relevant, that's going to be exciting, that's going to feel current, and that's going to be impactful. We don't like boring stuff. We do like to, be part of the conversation and, make a sort of impact. And there's different ways that you go about that. You go about it with very good craft. You go about it with humor, with a lot of intelligence behind it. And then of course the execution and everything so that it's well rounded up. But yeah, there's a lot of thinking, and I wanna give an opportunity to Armando to talk about that.
So I'll jump into that. As much as, and I mean, professors, bear with me here on this one, as much as we teach the overall advertising as a linear process, it unfortunately doesn't tend to be that way. So going back to what Bea was saying, it's really important to have good relationships across disciplines. You know, as Bea was mentioning, you know, usually in the creative space, they're a dupla, but when you really get those special projects and the work that really shines and goes all the way through, it's really how we've joked sometimes. It's like a tripleta. It's you have strategy, you have copy, you know, it's a trio: strategy, copy, art, all together and on the same page, because you want whoever's writing the brief to have an understanding of what is it that stimulates that copywriter, that art director, and vice versa. You know, someone who understands the brief and makes sure that whatever they're thinking visually or in words connects to the overall brand strategy and that you've laid out for that, either the white space you've laid out for the brand or whatever path we've charted for that brand or this given, you know, activation, campaign, whatever the case may be. So it's a really organic process, and some of the best work comes proactively. It's not, oh, client asked for this. It's, hey, I have this, you know, Bea or Jess will come to me, hey, I have this idea. How can we bring it to life? So, you know, and I'm usually consuming a lot of proactive information on a given space if it's a client that I'm servicing. So it's like, hey, I have this stat or two, this insight we can pull through to sell through this work. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're here to do. We're here to make amazing work, collaborate. We want things to go all the way through. And, you know, and part of having that good relationship, sometimes having those tough conversations like, hey, this might not have a leg to stand on. Hey, this brief is flat. It's having that comfort level, that chemistry with the people you work with. And the more you work with them, the more you're able to really know what springboards them, you know, what stimulates them as a creative and how to play off the briefs. But that's one aspect. So going back to Grisel's original point about like, how can I further explain brand strategy? It's pretty complicated because there's a lot of different things on a day-to-day. It could be the same thing. It could be very different. So it's everything from, for example, a lot of the clients we service and a lot of the scopes we have consider the Hispanic audience. So a lot of the times we'll be in tandem with their general market agency, making sure to give a lens, you know, what we tend to call, you know, POVs, you know, points of view. Hey, does XYZ concept make sense for the Hispanic audience? Is there any tweaks? You know, for example, if it's a spot about dancing, hey, what if we change the music or the type of dancing to make it more cross-cultural? You know, there's little tweaks you can make. So that's where we come in sometimes when it's work that's coming in from a GM lens, or sometimes it'll be what are those tweaks can make to transcreate. So that'll be sometimes going back to how we all work together. These POVs don't only come from a strategy perspective. I might be the one who ends up writing and packaging them, but the best comes when I'm consulting with the creatives I'm working with, like, hey, what would you change from this? You know, what are we aligned on? You know, what's the rationale? Hey, I'd like to change this. Do you have any rationale that I can back on why we should do this? And it's all that dynamic process and working together to really have that best work. And also, you know, as Bea mentioned, it's consuming a lot of information, because the best strategist will be able to tell you something in a whole page, in a paragraph, in a line. And another thing is knowing your audience. So I know if I'm working with Bea on a certain thing, it's, hey, let me give you a sentence, and that's a single-minded prop. You know, that's the key takeaway, the main message. You'll see it packaged a lot of different ways, but that's the main thing to focus on. If I'm talking to a client, they might want more of a paragraph. Or if I'm talking to another client, they might want more of an essay, a page, a deck. So it depends, but you really have to be able to synthesize information and also expand upon it as necessary. So it's all about reducing and expanding on that information. And that only comes from really understanding what you're talking about, the given space, and really looking at all aspects of a business and showing clients that you really care about their industry. You've taken the time. You know, at the end of the day, sometimes, you know, we might have a project-based client. They come in, they ask us for a 6-month campaign or year campaign. This client could have maybe been in this business in whatever vertical, let's say CPG, you know, consumer packaged goods. Maybe they've been, you know, there for 10 years. So they might know more about the given space than you. So you have to be very mindful on how you come into those conversations, acting like, oh, you know more about something that they've been in 10 years. You know, it's acknowledging their skill set, learning from them, and bringing in the added perspective. Because a lot of the times, more than anything, what strategy does, we're the voice of the consumer. Because a lot of the times they're thinking just business, they're thinking the industry. We're the ones that connect some of those dots and provide those opportunities, because they'll look at it as, oh, we're not selling this product, we need to sell this given product. We'll dig into what is the barrier. People think it's not lavish enough. Oh, they don't think it works, So then we'll help develop that messaging for, okay, we need to do a campaign around this to achieve that, address that consumer perception. What is that tension we're playing off, and what's that insight? What's that lever that we can use to debunk whatever thinking they might have that is that barrier to why they're not doing whatever action it is, signing up for something, purchasing a product, and whatnot. So I'll take a pause there.
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to mention, aside from all the good client stuff, is that it's really an exciting time to be in advertising in Miami right now, because the multicultural and Hispanic audience is so significant in the US, and it's growing by the day. And, it's so important to be able to talk to people and acknowledge the nuances that come from their culture and their language, and in ways that are relevant to them. So even though, like back in the day, a campaign for, general market would be just, an umbrella campaign for the whole country. It didn't necessarily like speak to all audiences, and it didn't really like speak to a lot of our people. So like, I'm from Venezuela, for example, or like, I don't know, it doesn't speak to like X or Y audience. So diversity is so important nowadays, and it's so exciting to be a part of that change. And it's so exciting to, kind of like educate people on why it's important to speak in a way that feels empathetic and inclusive of everyone. And Miami is one of those cities that like really champions that. Like you don't necessarily get that in other cities, which yes, of course, they do have a big sense of advertising and like a big culture for that type of industry. Whereas in Miami, it may only be growing, but let me tell you, I've been at it for about 6 years, and the difference has been ridiculous. It's grown so much, and agencies are setting up shop in here in Miami because there's so much opportunity. There's so much untapped stuff. Like the weather's amazing, but you already know that. But generally speaking, it's just exciting to be able to talk to an audience that feels like you, that looks like you, and that sounds like you. And it's important, and it's so significant, and it makes a big difference. And that's why agencies like Havas and bigger networks are showing interest in multicultural advertising experts. So it's very exciting.
And I want to piggyback off that, Bea. I really encourage all of you, ideally, don't overlook your Miami market due to the multicultural melting pot that it is, but think your hard skills, whatever you're learning in your respective craft in the current programs you're in. But also imagine going to a workplace where you can leverage, hey, how I grew up, what my household was like. Those are things that, as much as someone from other cultures might try to read up, or take on, anthropological studies on a given a group or whatnot, they don't have that you have. So that's a very unique skill that you'll have. So, whether you're Hispanic, Asian, African American, whatever the case may be, look for those agencies that will value that aspect of you, and you will enjoy it that much more because you're getting to bring your whole self to work versus trying to fit into their molds. If they're a more general market agency, take advantage of that because it's your skill set and also your experiences. Like, and I'm sure Bea's maybe had a couple of experiences like this. I've had multiple moments through my career. I'm like, I never thought I'd get to leverage this. Like this was, I thought this was something that's going to stay on the back burner, or I wouldn't get to even, talk like this at work or whatever the case may be. You'll really enjoy it if you look for those kind of agencies that welcome different perspectives, that are tapping into that kind of work. Because some of the coolest projects that we've been on, it's these bigger brands that have significant budgets. They have their agencies per audience. So we're all collabing, trying to find what is that universal insight, what is that human truth that cuts across all the different groups, while also still while being mindful of, as we execute it, maybe there's a couple different touch points per audience, but at least it all ladders up to this really rich insight that makes sense for all audiences. And that's what we're seeing the market move more and more towards, because, like Bea was saying, 10, 20 years ago, you'd have this main campaign and like a kind of sub campaign for the different audiences. more and more they're looking for this cross-cultural marketing that really taps into all audiences with these human truths, and making sure not to offend anybody in the efforts you're doing, while also connecting as much as possible, because it's a fine line. If you don't take any risk and you don't offend anyone, then are you really resonating or really relevant? You might be falling flat. It's a fine line. It's not easy by no means, but that's also why we do it as a committee. You know, different disciplines taking a look at things, different backgrounds. Like I'm Cuban, Bea's Venezuelan. You know, we take a look at different things. Like, hey, does this make sense? Even when it comes to especially, I would say, like copy. We sometimes we want to be very colloquial. We get to have a lot of fun like that with brands like Sedano's, tapping into the different ways, you know, people from different Hispanicities would say something or express something or call a given product. But when you're thinking on the national campaign level, you need to understand that more neutral Spanish. What is the word? What do I call this in Spanish that cuts across all the different countries that speak Spanish? You know, because your goal at the end of the day is understanding. You know, you want consumers to understand the message you're trying to convey to get them to have that action you're looking for.
I also want to say, yes, diversity and inclusion must be a top priority for everyone in the advertising industry, but also aside from that goody, warm, feely stuff, numbers talk. You know, like the buying power that minorities have is growing every moment, and you know, that's why so many clients are taking such a bigger interest in really understanding the insight and really understanding the audience and really understanding how to talk to them. So it's just something really important to keep in mind. It's not just because, oh, okay, like it's part of the political conversation nowadays. No, like it's important. There's money behind it. There's money to be made, and it's really exciting to be a part of that. And you know, you get to do so much stuff behind it. Like I mentioned, like there's not a single day that's like the same in my work, my line of work. Like one day, I don't know, I'm shooting a commercial on a backyard. The next day I'm in Chicago, like shooting something else. The next day I am, I don't know, creating stuff for social media. So it's just very exciting, and it gives you that opportunity to just, you know, be in the moment and, I don't know, brainstorm for hours with your partner and like, you know, really dream about those ideas that get you excited to be in this industry.
I have a question. I don't know if it's going to continue being Q&A, or you guys have, you know, something really prepared. But I know that we talk a lot. And by the way, I do warn the students that the way that we have to teach is very linear, like you were saying, but this is a very messy process. So, you know, you talk about the insights. And I know you as a strategist, Armando, you have to, you know, we have several strategies in the audience, but what type, how do you get to the insight? And I know that's a very big question, but if you basically do kind of like a small dive into the type of sources or processes that will assist somebody like Bea in her work. Do you look at syndicated research? Do you do primary research? Do you do all of the above? Where does that insight emerge?
Gotcha. I'll take a stab at it. It's hard to give an absolute answer to that. I think, you know, anyone in marketing and advertising, you'll come to make peace with the words, it depends, because that really is the case, especially across clients, because some have budgets that they're willing to take on focus groups, shop-alongs. You know, I've been fortunate to be a part of a lot of different types of research projects. Sometimes that's where you find the richest insights. Sometimes it's immersing yourself. Like if it's a business that you can go to the store, go check it out, you know, get a hands-on experience with the product, dive into Reddit. You know, there's different sources. I think it depends on the resources you might have for a given project. Sometimes it is syndicated research, but sometimes it's understanding. It could be a white space you identified from looking at the competitive set. Hey, everyone's doing this, no one's doing this. This is definitely an opportunity, because you're not going to have a data point that tells you no one's doing this. That's more from, you know, objectivity and looking at what other competitors are doing. So I've arrived at insights for different brands, many very different ways. And then it's also could be sometimes a little bit restrictive, because depending on the client, they have an investment in research. So you have the client telling you, hey, I need whatever you land on has to be inspired by this research I'm paying for, because otherwise, why am I paying for this research? So it works both ways. And it's a lot. There's a lot of different ways to approach it, and sometimes, as Bea will probably can probably confirm from her end too, from a creativity standpoint, sometimes having limited resources is when you really dig in and find something interesting when you go off the beaten path. Because another thing one of my mentors taught me in this is everyone has access to Simmons. Everyone has access to these syndicated resources. Doesn't mean don't use them. That means use them as a starting point, but definitely dive deeper. You kind of got to scour the deeper parts of the internet or conduct some primary research to really arrive at those pivotal insights.
Or draw inspiration from real life, anecdotes, experiences. I think that some of the strongest and most impactful work that I've seen out there has been from, as simple as keeping your eyes open, like what's going on around you, what's happening, like if you're really observant of everything that's going on, if you really look and if you really learn how to think as a creative and as a marketer, advertiser, whatever you want to call it, it's a way of thinking. It's a way of looking at things. Sometimes I'll start talking to my friends about like this random topics and like really dissect them, and they're like, where are you getting on with this? Like I'm not interested in this conversation. I'm just digging for stuff. I'm digging for insights. I'm digging for stories, for feelings, for something, a little bit deeper that could probably spark and inspire something. And like your professor said, it may be a little bit linear how they teach it at school and how you learn it. Nonetheless, sometimes we reverse engineer ideas, so that's totally valid too. So if you're a creative, sometimes you'll come up with an idea and it feels really brilliant, and you may not necessarily know how to put it into words or what the insight is.
With an answer, but I guess like.
Yep. Hello.
So go ahead, Ben. I think it was just somebody accidentally went off mute.
I think someone may have gone off mute. Lost my train of thought. But yeah, anyway, sometimes ideas do come in a different way, like idea first, and then you kind of like talk to your strategies and reverse engineer it and try to find the data and the insight behind it. Even if you cannot put it into words in that specific moment, it's perfectly valid to have an idea that feels incredible, and then you kind of like reverse engineer it and find a way to sell it.
And when thinking of the more linear process, one thing that I came across, studying other strategists and how some of the more popular thinkers in the space approach it, as much as we're tempted in the strategy position to try to solve things, when you're thinking of a creative brief, if you do your job right, you're a problem identifier. And then the creatives come in and come up with the solve. If you're doing your job well as a strategist, you're identifying what is the problem to solve. Like, this is the barrier, this is what we need to debunk. And then, you'll come up with a message off that, but creatives will find the best way to communicate that message. But the problem solvers are the creatives. We are the problem identifiers. Is probably one of the best ways I've seen it packaged.
Oh, that's perfect. So I want to open up to questions from the students. What has sparked questions, guys?
Well, this is not a question, but I just want to introduce myself. I'm Lisa Fernandez, and I have been working in RepublicaHavas since 7 months now, I think so, as a creative intern. So when I heard you guys were here,
hi, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, I'm super happy. So I just want to say thank you and hope I can meet you tomorrow at the anniversary party.
I'll see you there.
You know it.
Look for the glasses.
Okay.
That's awesome, Lisa. Awesome.
I didn't know you were part of the Republica fam. This work from home
situation
has been going on for a very long time.
That has been another adventure there.
Yeah, I know. I'm dying to go to the office, but not yet. So
it's okay. See what time.
Questions. Now is the time. So Armando, what type of, I know I go back because I love research. What type of syndicated do you use? Like Simmons? What do you use?
Simmons, Mars, Mintel, YouGov. I've used different ones depending on the client, and sometimes they have, sometimes they subscribe to like on IRI, Collage Group, sometimes they have access to these other research companies that, are always doing these webinars or these thought pieces on this audience and this topic, or just this topic, or just this audience. So it's a lot. And one of the most helpful things, I think, is once you're assigned to a given account or vertical, really consuming information proactively. Like one of the first things I did when I started getting into this industry, like I took inventory of my clients, started on my phone, like a notes. I'm like, because ideas come in the craziest times, like, what about this? And you forget them. So write everything down as much as you can, and know yourself. If you're a pen and paper person, by all means. But sometimes ideas are going to come to you when you're not, it's in the shower, it's at the gym, it's going for a walk, and I'm sure Bea can attest that too, because one of the challenges from this remote world is how much it's like, all right, think in front of a computer set. Sometimes you got to turn off the computer, go for a walk, and think through things.
Turn off the computer, go for a walk your dog, write ideas down, watch the thoughts flow through your veins. Like, don't just limit yourself to Google. Everyone has Google. Everyone, like, it's been done. It's great for a quick point of reference, but draw inspiration from real life. So yeah, like this is just like my notes on stuff that I come up with like on the random. And usually inspiration really does hit you when you're like the most relaxed, ironically, not when you're like pressuring yourself to like come up with something brilliant. That's not really the way the mind works, as you may have noticed. The more pressure you put into it, the worse it gets. So absolutely, like keep those notes open, because the good thoughts, they come and then they go just as quick. I was reading this book the other day. It's called it's kind of like a cheesy book, but it's good. The Big Thinking, Creative Think. I can't remember, but I'll find it. And it said something like, when an comes, like you didn't think of that idea, it's the vessel, and if you make it come to life, it stays with you. And if you don't do anything about it, it's just gonna travel and like go to someone else. That's why when you think of something and then you don't do anything about it, and 2 months later you hear that someone did it, you're like, oh man, I thought about that.
Could have done that.
It's like it was not your idea. Like you had it for a second, you were the vessel, you didn't do anything about it, and now it's gone. So that's kind of like how it works. So yeah, definitely keep your eyes open for those moments, and really hone into them and take advantage of them.
And to build on what you're saying, Bea, like let the ideas come out. Because sometimes, especially with the digital world we work on, we pull up a Word doc and it's like intimidating. Oh, do you start typing or whatever? If that's why sometimes pen and paper is better. Or I'm guilty. I use iPad and like digital notes because I like having like the digital benefits. But no one lands a tagline in the first shot. You'll write 100 and throw them away before. So sometimes it's put something on paper, even if it's just like shut off all your tabs. Go 10 minutes and just freestyle, just dump all your thoughts, walk away, come back, look at things. So what Bea's saying is sometimes you need to get things out of your head, walk away, let your subconscious work, connect a couple of dots and come back to it. And that's when you'll have it. That under pressure, hey, come up with a brief in 30 minutes. Hey, come up with an idea in an hour. It doesn't work that way, and a lot of times if you're actually able to somehow nail it in those crazy windows, it's because your subconscious is already kind of, tinkering with something, and the pressure finally maybe helped you tip over, but it's not something that's not sustainable long term. So really find your groove, or if you're a morning person or an afternoon person, what case may be, play to your strengths, and that can be how you schedule your calendar, schedule, your touch points with certain people. Also, again, have a healthy relationship with the people you work with. There's a lot of times I have projects with them. I'm like, do you want to be briefed on a Friday or a Monday? Because, some people like being briefed on a Friday to have it, linger in their mind over the weekend. But if I know she has a lot on her plate and she tells me Monday, all right, cool. But it's having that conversation versus just like, hey, let me slam this on your calendar on a Friday or a Monday or whatnot. You involve people in the process and it becomes a more equitable experience and relationship.
And how do you brief creatives? I mean, are you creative in the way you brief? Do you take them somewhere occasionally? How's that process?
We have our templates that would be like, our brief on a page, brief on a slide. So always that's part of it. It depends on the scale, usually of, like, for example, if it's a brand, like ongoing brands like Sedanos and like National Pork Board that me and Bea work on, we're both familiar with the brand. So I only have to necessarily bring in like net new information and get her, stimulated to whatever the ask is. And so sometimes that'll be a little bit of a competitive, what are a couple insights, and then always one major thing too if you're a strategist, get buy-in from whoever your lead creatives are before you start kicking people off. That way, there's no greater feeling in a kickoff meeting than when the creative is either basically helping you present the brief or even defending your brief versus, it's you against 20 people, preaching off that given brief. But it depends, because some of these projects, if it's like a very big brand campaign, or new business probably like the most elaborate sometimes pitching, because people might not know anything about the category. Everyone's new to the account. So you really have to find an inspiring way, to get all this information across without being too overwhelming and still leaving like this North Star. Because in my experience working with Bea and other creatives, they still gravitate towards that one page that they can leave on their desk and like kind of go back to and whatnot. It's not always these 50, 60 slide decks. So
yes, please.
It's come and go.
Yeah, absolutely. Like whenever the creatives and myself work with Armando or any strategists in our team, and they give us this document that is like 20 pages, it's like, like we're not really like doing anything here. You're just throwing, like filler at me. So let's get to that single-minded thought. What is the problem? What do I need to solve for? Like, what do I concentrate my energy and my thoughts on? And that's really important. And that's, as a strategist, yes, you need to be able to, of course, have the data to back up whatever it is that you're saying, or whatever framework, single-minded framework you're sharing with your creatives. But keep in mind that creativity, it's sparked by simplicity, and there's nothing harder than finding that simple thought. So when you find that, you're gonna get gold work from your creative.
And I'll add some more perspective to what Bea's saying. Bea doesn't care about 42% of Hispanics do this, 70% of Hispanics do that. I sum it into Hispanics are more likely to do this because this, you make it a more conversational statement. Now, I, as a strategist, need to make sure I have my data in line somewhere in, in the appendix or whatnot, because that's going to be for a different type of document to sell that into the client, for example, or to give it to the client to sell up to, to their board or, whoever the superiors are. But to the creative audience, that's not what they care for. You need to make sure you have your numbers and you're not speaking anything invalid to them, because then you're going to take them down the wrong path. But it's all about really boiling it down to it. Sometimes for creatives, you almost like flip the deck. How you might do it for a client, you show all the data and then, okay, I landed on this strategy. Sometimes for the creators, it's better to, hey, this is the strategy. If you have any questions, here's this, because sometimes they'll kind of get where you're going, where you're landing, and they might not have as many questions, versus if you take them down this journey with so many extra slides, you're like, all right, where are we going? Where have we been? And how do we get here? So sometimes it's better let them ask you questions like, all right, I see what you're saying here, but like, how'd you get here? Okay, this because this creative I saw from this competitor did this, so that's a learning, or we don't want to do this. It's always being, to how Bea's saying, being able to boil it down. Like, hey, I looked at the competitive landscape. If I had to summarize it in a couple sentences, this is what's happening. This is what 80% of the market is doing, or this is how this industry is talking to this audience. But really, it has to be to those bullet points. You have to have the homework, because to sell it to even my CSO, or internally, or to the client, you have to have that hard data and that extensive work, because you're going to have all those 10 videos that you looked at, or 10 spots, or hundreds of spots you might have looked at in the competitive process. But you might want to pick only a few that were maybe the most impactful to drive whatever conclusion you landed on, and give that to the creatives. You're not going to dump onto a creative, hey, here's 100 spots, 10 per competitor on this space. Like, no, that's not going to do anything.
And that's the challenge of being a good strategist, right? Like going through all of that information and synthesizing it into an important, simple thought. It's very difficult. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of homework, like Armando said, and you need to do it and you need to have it to get there. Nonetheless, I just want to reemphasize it so much, because you're going to be working with the creatives, right? Like they're the ones who are going to like output and create the work, the idea, the copy, the visuals, whatever that is. So whatever it is that you're telling them has to be very clear, very easy to understand. And ironically enough, Armando may think that I don't care about numbers. I generally don't. Nonetheless, when we're in the creative process, once we understand the main simple idea and the main tension point, we actually go and dig back into the appendix and find numbers and find data that like help us write more I don't know,
the various territories or the
lines. Yeah. like we'll go back to that research and, you know, find stuff that's like, oh,
But it's
man,
exactly what we were just saying. It's in the appendix. It's not bombarding you with it before we get to the brief.
Yeah, it's just
hey,
important not to.
here's the most important stat. Here's like these other 5 to 10 stats that I came across on the journey that might be interesting if there's something here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's exciting.
I have a question. Sorry. Oh,
For sure,
yeah.
ask away.
Hi, Armando. Hi, Beatriz. Nice to see you. And thank you for the presentation. I really like your vibes and energy. I have a question for Armando because I want to know, have you ever been in the situation when you can easily find the problem and it's so difficult to find a solution because after like doing the research, you can see that the product of the company is they got a lot of bad reviews on like social media and website and Reddit and other things like that. And it's so difficult to find a solution. So what would you do in that case? And have you ever been in like that situation?
And you might have to look for another problem. Remember, it's not always a single problem. There's no same way creative. There's no one way in. This is, you know, what you might have deemed the best way in. So there's where this might be the white space, but does that white space align with this brand? Like, if this is I'm just going to give a broad example. Let's say in the technology space, the key is to be innovative. And this brand isn't innovative. Well, what are the good attributes this brand has? So again, it's not always linear. It's like, what strengths does it have? Can it solve a problem? So it might be switching the problem you're looking at. It might not be the biggest problem, but if there's, you know, enough market share, given the size of that brand, they can play in that space. Because of course, we can't put, you know, a square peg into a round hole. It doesn't work that way. We can't, if the opportunity in a space is being eco-friendly, but this is a petroleum company, it's like, yeah, there's a disconnect there. We can't, you know, sell it in that way. Does that help?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's opened my mind a little bit. Thank you.
Whenever you hit those walls, just change the angle. Look at it from a different angle. Sometimes, you know, talk silly, like just get crazy thoughts out and then see and start with hypothesis, because sometimes that helps too. It's like, wouldn't it be cool if this? Wouldn't it be cool with that? You know, that sometimes helps you, you know, look at data versus just looking at particular data in a space. Like you're looking for, I wonder about this, or I wonder about that. And one thing that helps a lot, in my experience with the creators, is looking for either rich conflict or strong emotions. You got to make, because that's also sometimes a challenge, is making those flat numbers emotional. So sometimes that means, you know, making these a little bit punchy, exaggerate a little bit, because that's what's going to stimulate your creators. If you have a very flat sentence, it's like, okay, so what? It can't feel matter of fact. You know, look for those emotions. You want to stimulate the people that are looking at this. You're telling a story, and a strategist too, as you're building decks, you're telling a story. So you gotta, you know, create that rising action, hit that climax, hit the solution. You really want to take people through a journey and trigger those emotions. And
don't pigeonhole your creatives into your idea. So like it has happened to me before that sometimes, I don't know, working with a certain strategist, like they'll come, like strategists are and can be creative, but you have to be very careful because you are setting up the framework for all the thinking and all the ideation and creation. So like if you pigeonhole your team into like a very almost like biased type of thought, they're gonna get stuck in this box of thinking and they're not gonna get out of there, and the thoughts are not gonna flow. So you have to be reiterating and re-emphasizing what Armando said. You have to be almost like a problem finder, not a problem solver at times. And yes, you have to talk to them through the process and, you know, be able to like back them up and inspire them with additional like knowledge. But yeah, you have to allow them to create. You have to allow the land to be fertile for creativity. You can't just, you know, put them in a box. And that goes back to, you know, a lot of people sometimes think, unfortunately, get the brief signed off by the client first. No, get internal sign off with the creators you're working on. Like, you're comfortable with this, because sometimes it's happened plenty of times. It's not like, oh, the brief is super triggering, but for creators with their eyes and how they react to things, sometimes tweaking a word or two in whatever that key message is gives them this much more freedom or makes it this much more tighter. That is very important to do that and have that buy-in before you get client approval, because there's nothing worse. Like what Bea's saying is, all right, strategist came up with this in a silo, presented it to the client approved, and now, hey, we're locked into this space when this is not a space you would have really even wanted to explore. Thank you.
question.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
For sure.
Hi, Sandra. Oh, I applied for the internship this summer, and I was just asking, like, how is your internship program and everything?
I personally, I think it's awesome. I've seen a lot of people, I didn't go through it, but I know a lot of people who are currently on our staff went through it. So they learn a lot. You work with interns to do a project itself. And then you also get to do a lot of shadowing in your respective discipline throughout the whole journey. And sometimes you get assigned even like an individual project, like a few semesters, I think like a couple years, I think a year or two ago, we had like a strat intern. We wanted to get smart on Gen Z. You know, that was his generation. So we're like, hey, you know, talk to us like we're 5. Put us on game. Teach us about Gen Z. So that was like his fun side project amongst other things that he was doing. So it really depends on your field. So I don't know, like Bea, what the experience might be for like, you know, within the creative department. I'm not sure what that might be from the intern perspective.
Well, I think an internship is very underrated because it's the start of your career, even though you may not notice it, right? Because it's obviously a requirement to graduate and whatever. But if you start on the right place, that's gonna just set you up for success. So I think it's really important to be selective about where you start your internship, where you intern. And at Republica, like Armando said, it's really exciting because we do put a lot of effort into involving interns into real work, not just like, oh, you know, like silly busy work to keep you busy, like that sucks. No, like we really do make an effort to involve you, to like teach you the ways, and you get to interact with people from like all levels and different departments. And because it's almost like they know that you're an intern and they're aware of it, and like people will go out of their way to explain things more in depth and, you know, kind of like tell you how they got to that thinking or to that line or to that specific brief or whatever it may be. So the experience at Republica is exciting for sure. And yeah, I think that they make a big emphasis on really like including the interns into real day-to-day work. I don't know if it's the case in every agency, but that's why I definitely encourage for you to be selective about where you apply for your first internship.
And then I definitely encourage, I can't speak off the top of my head what positions we're hiring for right now, but definitely look on the Republica website. I know we post usually the jobs we're looking for. And if not, also send in, you know, your resume. I think there's an email you can send them to. That should be an HR email that they review. So definitely, you know, take advantage. I'm almost positive we're looking for strategists. So I think that there's an opportunity there. And I'm not sure, Bea, if we might be also in the creative department. I'm not sure right now.
I feel like we're always looking for people.
I feel like, yeah, it might be. So never, and always apply, because it's also just about kind of getting into every agency's little black book. Like, you know, you want to be in their database, you want to be in their system, and just familiarize yourself. Because sometimes it might be like, hey, you're a great candidate. There isn't a space right now, but maybe you come back to that agency in a year or two and, oh, okay, perfect, boom, you know, and they can see your growth. If you already were a nice fit, imagine what you might have done in a year or two. So definitely don't leave any.
Definitely don't limit yourself just to HR. Like, go ahead and find people on LinkedIn. Like, message them. Be original. Like, don't be cookie cutter. You know, like especially if you're in this industry. This is the industry to be bold and to be, you know, courageous and to have your real tone. Like this, we're so lucky to get to work in an environment that, oh yes, it is kind of corporate. Like it doesn't work that way. You know, you need to be proactive. You need to have attitude. You need to show your personality, because that's really what connects. So, you know, go ahead and like research who the people are and like what clients you want to work with. Take the time to do your homework and understand like the type of work that they're already doing, you know, but also, you know, be your authentic self. Definitely, like don't just Google on Glassdoor, oh, how to act and like wear a tie. Definitely be yourself. Definitely, you know, find different ways to reach out to people. I once saw a job application that was through Venmo, and like this kid,
I remember that one.
He requested like the salary that he wanted, like what, 60,000 for a starting
Something
position,
like that for the
the
position.
CEO of the company, and like he got hired immediately. So this is the industry that we're in. So just to give you like a small breath of what it is and what it can be. So definitely there to play in that field.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of opportunity in our industry. It's only growing. Like the biggest thing that happened, you know, during the pandemics, we went from being advertising to crisis comms for a lot of brands. They realized, oh crap, if you know there's a recession coming, or people are spending less, or people are holding on to their dollars, we need to make a harder case of why they should spend with us versus our competitors. So a lot of those brands that were just in a discount space, or you know, really had no brand equity or no relationships with their consumers, panicked. Now the brands that had those healthy relationships prospered.
Questions?
I have another question. Sorry.
Go ahead.
What do you recommend for an intern, like to get a job, like their portfolio, like notes that you recommend to have, or work to put in the portfolio? What do you recommend?
Put only the best of your work. Be very selective.
Exactly.
Don't put filler work. Just put things that you're proud to show. That's the best filter that you can go through. And also don't be afraid to show personal projects, passion projects. So if you were a designer, for example, but you know, you also have a great eye for photography, go ahead and put that in. As long as it has like a connecting thread of thought and makes sense, don't be afraid to put it in and explore. Again, creativity at least is something that it's, again, a way of kind of like thinking, a philosophy of thinking, not just something that you do in Photoshop. So definitely don't be afraid to add passion projects in there, and be very selective of what to put in there. Be short and sweet with your bio, and have contact information. That's the most I can say.
Absolutely. And then to piggyback off what Bea's saying, it's tell a story. Like, don't just, what good is a problem without the solution? You know, if you're a strategist, right, don't just show the brief. Show how that brief was effective because it led to XYZ output from the creative you work with, or vice versa. Don't just show the creative, you know, on its own. Show how that creative that you produced pays off the brief you were given. So it's really showing that connective thread, because, you know, as I think you've probably picked up from like me and Bea on this call, I have to think a little bit creatively, and she has to think a bit strategically. That's how the best work comes out. It's not just, oh, I only do numbers. Oh, I only do words. Oh, I only do arts and visuals. That's not how this works. We really have to respectfully, you know, kind of go outside your role. If you come into this industry just like, I'm going to do this little thing here, you're not going to have a good time, and you're not going to make impactful work.